Hi there. Let us continue part 2 of what I have chosen to call the base concepts of the toolkit. So you kind of understand that toolkits, as well as what we are dealing with here as change makers, are both the Project Blue Flower. It is also psychological. It is also progressive. It is also about dealing with different kinds of transformational processes of energy. And it's also connected to the original purpose of the universal cycles. It's a very broad spectrum, and I keep calling it a spectrum. It's a palette of different reasons and different functionalities and different purposes and why we're doing it. That's why I use the analogy of the thumb, the hand, the arm, the torso, the body, the organs, the field it's in, the reality, the solar system, and going outwards, where you will constantly find new reasons and new purposes and new functionality of what we're dealing with. So we need to understand that we are specializing because that's the way we are working our way through these different transformational processes. We need to specialize within one area of expertise and then take that, what we have learned there, and transfer it to the next, where we then upgrade in a new way with what we have learned. That's also part of the timeline work, where you understand once you nail that ring of reality, you're expanding into the next one and the next one. And that's part of the Pillar Project setup as well, where you begin with one level, and once you have nailed that one, you'll go to the next level, similarly as classes as you have it in the educational system. So that's the mythology. That's the baseline mythology of how you are working as a change maker. One issue at a time, nail it. Figure out what it's made of, what are the obstacles, what are we dealing with here, how can we change it, what needs to be changed, what is possible to be changed, not what you want to change, but what is possible, seeing what you're dealing with, not what you want it to be, but what it actually is, and use yourself as the sounding board, the instrument, the violin that is able to work on all the different harmonics of energy that is necessary to create both a pattern of change you can then superimpose on the item, the issue, the cause, whatever you're dealing with, so you can seed the seed that will lead to the changes if others take that opportunity. Because I'm not going to say take the bait, because then it's manipulation, but are taking your patterns of change and validify it in their different exemplification, using it in their versions and how they interpret it, so they would create what they see to be the changes they feel is the right for them to instigate in the world, because we can't control what they're doing with what we're creating. That's another level of the challenges as change makers. You want to create a specific outcome. That's why you can't be all focused on the outcome. You need to focus on the process, and you can never ask others to do a certain thing. You can't control what they are doing, but you can control your own purity rate, your own standards, and your own progression rate, which is why you understand this is not done for service to self, so you will survive. You are doing it for the highest good of the many, but you are always looking back into your own, you're always investigating your own processes, your own ideas, and why you're always self-evaluating constantly and all the time, so that you can say, rightfully so, if you were trialed. And this is where we have the holographic teaching system that technically helped us in the original Pillar Project to do that, be the sounding board. Whereas now it's been taken over by the regress races, the colonizers. They have changed that into the trial system. But the mechanics are the same. You still, when you go into these holographic trials, or when you post or went to the holographic teaching system, the original spheres that you would then merge with energetically, and it would scan you, and then it would mirror back to you using the principles, the dynamic of the principles, mirror back to you, technically principle 4, what you needed to work with. And then you would get the download from there, what you could do, but it would always be up to us to choose what would be the right approach according to our genetics, according to our project, and what we wanted to create the architecture of, and how we felt was the right way to transform the D13 spatial collective D13 spatial collective energies, the previous universal structures, and again after the timeline event and what happened. It always comes down to who and what we are as individuals. And therefore, when I say I am, and going back into that, the trial system, it's the same thing. You're just opposing different holographic cubes and what they have of different programs. But if you stand impeccable in the original ways, that program will be forced to let you go and move on to the next level, because it is based upon the original holographic teaching system. And that's why the Pillar Project comes in. That's why I put in so much time into the principles and the rules and the laws. And some of you say almost vomit by the mere thought of it, because I've said it again and again and again and again. That is because if you are going to move out of the distortion layers and out of the prohibiting technologies and everything that's here, the only way you can get through is if you are standing impeccable in the original rules and laws and principles, because it is based upon the original construction of this reality field. So that's why I have put that in again and again and again, because these regress races, they give shit about who you are, whatever you're doing. You are not changing them. You can't change other life forms. It's impossible to change other life forms. But we can work with the original construction, and we can work with the original purpose of the construction. We can work with the original energetic laws of the universe that we're part of. We can work with the original architecture of our reality field and the original version our energy system was created to unfold, and what the purpose was of that. And for that, these technologies are part of that. Even though I'm encountering all of its distorted ways, some of it I can resume to its original functionality, but then it will collapse because it runs on a higher density configuration that is no longer present in our reality. So yes, I'm transforming it back to original purpose, because I know what it is. It's in my architecture to keep the original programs intact, as well as having the original scientific build-up code streams of these technologies. It's part of me, because that's why I'm here as well. That's why I returned, because yes, I was in the Andromedan system. Why the fuck would I even go back to this completely collapsing, taken over, or whatever it had been engineered to? Because I am part of this reality field. I'm part of the construction behind it, even though it's been taken over and adapted and whatever has been going on. It still holds my original consciousness potential, because it's part of the Pillar Project and I was part of engineering. And as I said, I stand accountable for the ancient ones. I'm part of the new grand cycle technologies to get whatever that was out of this system, and then it can collapse. And whatever I've been part of. And that's why once I returned in the 50s or whenever it was, that's why they took me, because if I had just come in and cleared all of that out, I could have pushed the button and then initiated the whole collapsing and pull out. And then I would have left, and then they would go into that where we are now. So that's also why, again, they have been doing all sorts of stuff to get that configuration, thinking that would, or make me repair the technologies or whatever been gone through. All of it is collapsed and failed, because of course, when I returned, I didn't come with the full scope of everything. Goes without saying, I engineered an energy system that was suitable for certain things. I knew what I was going into. I knew the manipulation. I knew the bastards I was going to deal with. What I hadn't foreseen was the ones I trusted had been taken over, which were replayed to me, as I talked about with some of the people I was working with in Australia. Anyway, so going to that, being accountable to the ancient one, does that mean that they have any kind of take me out systems whatsoever? No, not at all. It goes with this. When you are accountable for someone else, in the end, you're accountable to your own honor, because it's not about, oh yeah, they're going to give me shit and we are going into some kind of punishment or whatever, because as progressive humans, we don't come from systems that run on punishment. That's part of the hijacking races or whatever, and this whole kind of you will die or whatever, all of these kind of things. We are semi-eternal beings that are working through different universal cycles. And we know that, we remember everything that we are. So punishment is not part of our vocabulary, but we are self-reliant, and we are our own judges, because we know what we are and what we're supposed to do. And we put a pride in a positive manner, not pride as in being vain, but we put in this This understanding, that's where the highest purity rate standards and progression rate comes in, because that's just who we are. It is as natural for us as it is for this form to breathe. Because in the true wells, we don't breathe. That's why I put it that way. So you kind of understand this is also part of the toolkit where that's why I keep saying you need to remember who you are, because not until you truly know who you are and why you're here and what's going on, and you have got your own history clear to you, and you transform the timelines, you've done the trialing, you have freed yourself to the degree that you can, even though it keeps coming back, at least you're no longer enslaved by it. You are mastered the base program. You know what it is. You still have to earn money. You still have to eat food. You still have to poop and pee and whatever, but you're not enslaved by it. There's a huge difference there by being part of something and then be in it without actually being entangled in it. So that's also where we understand the law of participation. We're here and we're very observant of always keeping our energy system part of it, but not so much as we align with it. Again, some of the difficult sciences of being in a reality field. And that's what I typically call being under the diplomatic architecture, where we are part of a system, but we don't become part of it. We are in it, we function in it, but we are not aligned with it. We have not assimilated. Another important distinction to be made. The same when we work as change makers. We can embark on different projects, which I have shown you in the opposition dynamics in the transition sciences, where we can, as I work with the Bailey material, the Blavatsky or the Kabbalah or the chakra system, whatever it was, when we specialize, we dive into a specific section of reality with a specific code system, a specific architecture, a specific purpose and function, and a specific configuration, all different things that are creating some sort of energetic ripple effect in that reality field. And we use our consciousness to amplify that pattern of whatever it is to either transform or amplify or transmute, that means to delete literally, or change it into something entirely else, which is also, as part of this reality, a deletion. It vanishes from this perception of reality. So whether you extinguish it and evaporate it, or you lift it to its high potentials and it is transferred via the gate system back to the original worlds it came from, it ceases to exist inside this reality. And that's the main purpose of the outer domain. And that's also important to understand. So if we are working as change makers, we are both making it easier for others to do the transition, by clearing and showing the way and being path cutters and all of these kind of things. And we are creating the patterns of change and we're seeding the seeds so a tree can grow, but it needs to be watered. And the only ones that can water the tree are the ones that are living inside this reality. And if they choose to go some completely different direction, no matter what we have done, no matter what we have shown them, no matter what we have created of good, new, different types of realities, we've seen that so many times. If they still choose to do it their ways because they are insectoids or they are already from a system and came here as refugees, they destroyed their own worlds as the lunars did. They destroyed the moon we gave them. They have destroyed everything and they're still destroying things. You can't change these people. You can work as much as you like, but they are what they are, and not until they get to that point where they say, I'll change. Can you change anything? And then they begin the hard journey, and most of them give up because it's just too damn difficult. We're seeing that with humans as well. So when we work as change makers, we understand that we are creating the tools for change. We are creating the patterns for change. We are creating the possibilities for change. We are creating what is necessary to instigate change. But change only occurs if people are catching the ball, if they are doing what we are showing that they can do, if they are following these general teachings, these ideas, these ways of doing it to the perfection of the pattern that they have embarked on. And some people will try to do that to perfection, but will actually discover that that pattern of change is not suitable for them. It's not in alignment with their energy configuration, or it's premature. They're not ready for what it takes, and they will then begin the pattern, but they will jump out, as I've seen with the progression sciences. They begin, and then they will dismiss it and say, no, it's not for me, and they'll do something else, and then it will just be in them like this little seed that then grows. The more they experience other stuff, they will begin to compare it with what they actually learn in the progression sciences. And if they have the original viable genetics that were part of the original Pillar project, or came here as part of the undoing of the timeline event, or whatever it was as part of the restoration program, there will be something in them that will kind of nag a little bit, kind of saying, don't you think you are on the wrong path here? Because you actually you were drawn to the right pattern of change to begin with. Why you're now doing something else? And you will begin to have that little bit of inner discussion. Sometimes people are always also on the progression path, and they are doing the progression science. And then they have the energetic parasites also creating this kind of, should you even be here? So this is again the cognitive dissonance, which is part of being a change maker. You will always be in opposition with either yourself or others or reality or the energetic parasites or whatever. And there's only one way to go through all of that, and that is to head on transform it the best way you can. Again, principle, laws, and rules. You are using these. That's the most important part of your toolkit. Just to put that in context as well, so you don't just go on with the toolkit. It's all about the outer domain and the outer reality and business models and learning accounting and the laws and what have you. That's also part of it. But the most important toolkit as change makers, being a whole change maker. You can be any change maker you like within the base program. Then you go in and do your studies at business schools and other places where you will get that toolkit, where you will learn these things. And as I said, I already done that years ago in the 90s. So I already got these toolkits. So I don't need to do them again. Now I can take them to the next level. Again, master the base program before you even dream on creating. How are you going to create a pattern of change if you don't understand all the implications of reality and what that means to be part of this reality? Just putting it in context. So a lot of things we know already and a lot of things we're learning along the way. So we are also in this understanding that we are constantly learning new stuff. We are in a constant process of learning. It's not enough just to take one course and then you're good to go. This is just the basic level of it. Then you have new challenges. You will find new types of information that helps you get a new knowledge base from where you can create the new tools that you need to put in your toolbox. So education is a prominent feature of being a whole change maker. Because education is not just about learning stuff. It's also about getting skill sets, getting knowledge that allows you to see more and more details of the forest so you understand the complex system you're working with. But at the same time, it is also important that you understand that you can take all of that knowledge, and when we're talking about the forest again, and you're looking at a specific mushroom, you can enjoy that specific mushroom on its own and see it as independent of the system it's part of. But you also understand the only reason why it's functional and why it's living, because you can pluck it and then it's out of the system. You can take it home and you can cook it and eat it, and then it's part of your system. And then it has its purpose and function as food inside your system. But as long as it's in the forest, it's connected to the forest, and by that it's playing out its function as part of the forest. So that's also important when we talk about our toolkit, is that we understand we have something that's part of our system, and there's something that's part of a different system, and that's something that's part of the joint system. Because I'm in the forest and I'm not part of the forest, but I'm part of this world that the forest is part of. So this is also, again, system thinking, where we understand the systemic energetic processes that are the next level of our expansion sphere, and the alternate reality perception, where we understand, yes, to be able to really create changes in this world, we need to understand all the things that actually are engineering and creating and upholding this reality. it might not when we talk about the forest again, because it's a good analogy, right? You have that whole system that runs on its own, is engineered in a specific way, and you have different life forms that exist there. But we're not born in the forest, are we? We're born out of humans that lives in cities. Yes, in the olden days, there were females that were born or males that were born in the forest, and they became part of these different humans that were very absorbed into the whole system of the forest. But if you ask me, what is the closest kind of creature that is born into the forest system, aside from bugs and birds and snails and all sorts of critters and larger animals and mammals, if we're going to say some kind of that had a pentagram form as an upright human being, and then we're not talking about yetis and what do you call it, that Sasquatch or whatever we're dealing with here. We're talking humanoid or human. Sasquatch and yetis, these are humanoids. They are engineered for a specific purpose. They are a crossling, as it's called. But something that resembles a human, not just because you can say, well, just because you have a lot of fur does not mean they're not a human, but it's closer to a mammal, it's closer to a bear or a gorilla or something else. It's very close to, and they are organisms, they are life forms, they have an intelligence, they are conscious, they have their own paths to walk or whatever purpose they were engineered for. I'm not diminishing their functionality or anything, just to put that one in clear. But if we are to say something that were brewed out of the forest, born in the forest by creatures that were engineered for the forest, we would have one group left, and that would be the fairies. So I'm just putting that in context. And since you're not a fairy, you are not born by this otherworldly creature in the forest, but you were born in a city by a female woman under the enslavement program. Just to put that in context as well, we understand that when we are working with the forest, we are foreigner in the forest. So we must respect the laws of the forest. We must respect that when we enter into the forest, we are walking into an ecosystem that has its own laws and rule sets. And we will only be visiting it, but we can make a change. When we go in and we enjoy nature, and when we enjoy walking in the forest, all depending on your genetic and what you are, you can just be someone that travels through and you have no impact whatsoever. But if you have genetic and energetic alignment with some of the creatures of the forest, or you have some ancient connection to some of the fairy lineages or whatever, you will see the forest in a different manner. And then it's up to you to decide in that moment, when you enter into that jurisdiction, whether or not you're trying to create an impact, because it's not always given that we are to change our surroundings. So that's another important learning lesson here, is that you might be able to change it, but it's not the same as you have to change it. This is again where you do the understanding of what you're dealing with. This is where you look at the system as it is, and you will say, I can change it, but it's not mine to change, because I don't have any jurisdictional rights there. That's also a very important lesson to learn. And then there are other things where you say, oh, I can't be bothered changing that. But then you have to, because you have jurisdictional rights. And it is part of your original lineage. It is part of your original makeup. And it is part of your timeline of work. So you better get equipped to do that. And that's the learning process, where we are facing something we are not ready for, but we have to learn to the tools, the knowledges, the sciences, the energy work, the difficulties of it, the pattern of it, everything that's going with it in the best way we can. And to begin with, that's outer research that gives us a knowledge base, teaching us how the construction is made. The general sciences are teaching us they have observed this reality, they've concluded certain things about this reality, and that's fine enough for us. We can work with that. But then we take it to the next level, where we then begin to, you could take a leaf, look at a leaf, or look at your plant in your house, and begin to work with your plant energetically. See what it teaches you, hear what it teaches you, work with what it shows you. After, you can only do this when you have done enough timeline work and clearing work on your own, where you have learned that process of investigation and amplification, where you lift your heart energies to allow the different levels of your architecture to reveal its content, so you get what it's made of, how you engineered, how you actually function. And once that is possible, you can do the same with a plant or your chair or whatever. And I remember the first time when that kicked in. It's a matter of clearing and inner work and meditation and contemplation and studying and self-healing and self-scanning and all sorts of processes. And suddenly you have built enough nodal points that activates that level of your energy system. And then it kicks to life. And then you suddenly get a new feature you didn't have before. You never know when it happens, but once the momentum, the energy system, the nodal points, the levels of that pattern of change has overlaid enough in a positive manner your original architecture, so you have activated enough of the original nodal points that allows that part of your architecture to run in its correct manner, aligning with the different energy units of a reality field that is connected to the construction, that aligns with that activation of that level of your energy system. Will it ignite? And then you will get the consciousness potentials inside this body to work in that manner. And I know I could explain a lot more about that, but I choose not to here, because that is just seeding that one in. And then you can listen to that sequence again and contemplate, what does it mean for you? How do you get to that point where you have activated so many different levels of your original architecture on a specific level, so you can ignite that segment of your energy system by connecting it to the correct field within the original construction of this reality field, so it ignites the energy units in that manner that they amplify your originally existing consciousness units to spark to life and operate and work as they were supposed to, and by that begin to override the false programs in your neural network, so you get that capacity back into this physical vessel. And that's the first step of change makers. That's why it's so important to get the progression work, because we become the changes. We have done the work in ourselves. We have not always understood what we are doing, because sometimes we have to work here and there and everywhere on levels that we are knowledgeable of and on levels we don't know of. Sometimes we just hit the button without knowing it. We're just doing clearing work. We don't know what we have done, but suddenly it's there, and then it ignites, because it is like the matrix of change. It's about the amplification vectors. It's about how many layers of the architecture are you activating until it begins to vibrate, so it creates synergy. And it's the synergy effect that sparks you to life. Not all of the individual processes, but the sum of the processes will ignite your original architecture. So that's the first step of being a change maker. And that's part of a toolkit. And even though I say you need to master this, do I master it? No, but that's why I just keep working. I just take one thing at a time, get it done, do it to the best of my abilities, the highest purity rates, the highest standards, all of my courses, whatever I'm doing, just doing one bit at a time and lead it to completion. Another thing, starting a project, leading it to completion, starting another project, leading it to completion, and all of the processes that entails, thinking about it, writing it down, figuring out what it's about. How can I do this? What do I need to do of courses? Doing some of the brush up courses on Coursera, looking up on the internet, not anything there, meditate upon it, contemplate upon it, go in vertical energy work, go in horizontal energy work, doing the exercise energy work where I work with clearing of energies while I'm exercising, looking at reality, looking at the sky, looking at the ground, looking at all levels, all sorts of weird stuff that I'm doing. And then suddenly one day, ding, I get the idea, ding, I get the insight, and then I'm rolling, and then I'm doing something, and then I put it into a course material, or then I put it into some kind of idea. Because as I verbalize these energies and I verbalize these patterns and I put them in a logical context, which are the courses of the whole academy, I am creating the pattern of change. I'm creating the architecture, which is my profession. And as I do that, following the original dynamics of my original energy system and my original functionality inside this reality field, I am amplifying the different levels of my energy system that kind of sparks to life, because I'm doing what I'm engineered to do. I'm in alignment with my true purpose. And that's why I put in the beginning of the course why I was depressed being in the outer domain or the outer reality-based programs set up, because there I was not doing what I am engineered to do, so to speak, what I have created myself to be engineered to do. There I was following the bidding of others, their structures, their architectures. That was so wrong for my architecture, because I'm not supposed to be following others. I'm supposed to instigate processes for others. So see, that's very important to understand what your original engineering actually is. And that does not need to be what I am doing. You could be something entirely else. Some of you are engineered to be following others because you are in the mentor-student process, or whatever it is. There are many different configurations. So again, this is the process of understanding who and what you are. And then you say, well, I don't think it's fancy to be a follower. I'll rather be an engineer or something that's creating something. And that's again where we go, and this is not about the caste system in the Hindu hierarchy where you stay with who and what you are. But the first step of all change is to acknowledge what you are and acknowledge what is possible and acknowledge what you need to achieve to go to where you need to go to get to the next step of your own progression journey. So you kind of need to emplace yourself. And we know from the whole philosophy book, they try to do that for us, which failed like everything else. But you need to kind of classify yourself where you actually belong. And it's better to classify yourself lower than you actually are, because then you won't get inflated by all the grandness, as we talked about in the skill sets. You won't get inflated by all sorts of parasites that will tell you that you're unique and you're special and you can change the world, you can do this and that, whatever. I've had plenty of that one. Boy, if I were just half of the things I've been told I would be able to go out in the middle of the street and I could change the entire planet overnight if I were all of the things they told me I am. But clearly that has not happened yet, has it? So I'm not that whatsoever. So again, clarity, level-headed, strategic, resilient, solution-based, down to earth. What is possible? What can I do? What is in alignment with my energy system? And doing that double process of both reconfiguring yourself by doing what you are made to do, upgrading yourself by challenging yourself to new what we call obstacles, but new challenges where you transform energy. You learn the processes of learning what are you dealing with? What is the architecture? What can be done? What should I do? Is it mine to do? Or should I just let it go because it's not mine to work with? You will see with the level of resistance and what comes from it, as I always talk about the colontics, as in, yeah, I really wanted to do that, but I got blackbird attack and all sorts of weird stuff going on. So just yeah, probably not for me. Probably not invited to that party, right? So again, understanding not just as in kind of you are not to superimpose yourself on everything. You have specific skill sets where you have jurisdictional rights. That's also only if you know who you are, do you know what you have of jurisdictional rights. And even though, and we'll go to the case of the avians, because we've got a lot of avians inside the progressive lineages here. They were brought here, as I said, to sustain as part of the hijacking. They were brought here to give it an infusion, but they chose specifically and deliberately insectoid and low-level avian races and brought them here so they would not pose a problem, so that they would only fuel the grids, but they would not become a threat to their colonization programs. So important to understand. So if that's the case, well, then these insectoids and these avians, both of these insectoids are kind of, that's transhumanism. They've been taken over a long time ago. But there are still some of the avians left in humans. And we can then say, well, what are their prospects of progression work? What are their prospects of doing this? Well, technically, they have a very good progression possibility because they brought here are kept more or less intact. But the problem is they are happy seekers. They are desire seekers. They have this enormous weakness for partnerships. They are fueled by the love story. Because that's the ultimate happiness. That's some of the trickery they were brought here with, because some of them were not just, they got here under false pretense and then they got enslaved. Some of them were captured and brought here, but by that, that hostile invasion, they would have been destroyed in their naivety. So there was a lot of weird stuff going on, including the reptoids that had that dazzlement and all these kind of things you're seeing playing out within the human population today. These are that group. They were tricked to go here. They were tricked into being taken over because they were infantile and naive and all these kind of things. And they went with that whole, whatever was the Dracos that came there dazzled them, even though that kind of weird cognitive dissonance, as in kind of seeing one thing but not understanding what it was, because they have never encountered it before. They didn't know that there existed perversion and evil and colonization and taking over and enslavement, whatever, all of these kind of things. So quite a lot of these, I've had a lot of these avians in my life because I have that engineering in my body. As I said, my mom was one of them. So with that, born being that, even though I am not that, again, a long process of me to altering my physical form. And that's also why it's so receptible for all of these energetic parasites of the fourth cycle. It's literally brewed out of one of these enslaved, taken over, turned over, happy seeking, relationship, dreaming, desire driven, blah, 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 naive females that has a lot of potentials, but never could figure out how to live her life because there was always something that made her unhappy. There was always something that was too difficult. There was always something that made her depressive. So that's the downside of that type of avian genetics. They haven't got the resilience to be able to be part of this reality. So that would be the first challenge to overcome. How do I get that resilience? And I've done that process myself because I acknowledged at some point, first and foremost, I acknowledged when my pituitary gland with the hormone system and the whole breeding when I was 13, 15 kicked in. I kind of, that's the end of my purity rate there, because now I'm going into this whole being hormonal driven into sexual desires. And I kind of slided down the hill on that one, forgot myself and all these kind of things, as you know, until in the beginning of the 90s, where I then had that realization that I kind of needed to get back on track with the mattress and the ocean, and that's why I brought it in here. And that led me to that taking control of my own world, of my own. I had begun it earlier on in different ways and forms when I came home from Israel, and I've done it in different phases throughout my life, where I recognized if I want to be something else, I need to change foundationally what I am. But I didn't get all the way through in one go. I had a little bit there, a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit there, and whatever, because there are so many layers that needs to be worked with. So that's that process. And you never know which one leads to the right outcome, but you do the process anyways. You begin on the process, you embark on it, and you let it go because it's too difficult, too much resistance. You return to it later on. It's always iteration, over and over and over and over again. It's trial and error. It is embarking on and letting it go, 2 steps forwards, 4 steps back, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. You decide yourself, whatever understanding. That's part of a toolkit to understand these dynamics. That this is not just, beginner, and then it just run like a train down a track. It doesn't. Well, it's a train wreck if you want to go with that one, because it never goes as you expect it to. It's never what you think that will activate you that actually activates you. Such as, would I have ever dreamt of that the actual activation of my energy system would go through being a releaser? No, not in any ways or forms. So why is it that they tailored me to be that? Why is that part of my activation process? Because some of the genetics I hold are no longer present in our reality field. They are only present in the underworld. They are only present in some of the dark forces and dark races and falling angelics, because they are so old, they go back to prior the timeline event. They are here because they succumbed to the timeline event. But they have the polarity version of my genetics. And therefore, the only way I can activate my genetics is by being surrounded by them, getting that imprint, and then fighting to my teeth to transform it. And in that process, also actually do what I claimed post timeline event that I could do. I am doing it now. That's part of my completion of my personal cycle, is I claimed I could do something in the restoration program. And I have done it. I have proven that it's possible. In spite of everything. So nobody can come and say, well, you didn't live up to your word. I have done it. And that's also tick a box. Again, as change makers, we are ticking the boxes of what we know we can do, have put it into amplification, not always the way we thought it would because we're working within a system that has its own laws. But if we are creating the pattern correctly enough, it will eventually begin to spark back what we have done in the right manner. So we amplify our energy system and activate different levels of consciousness. Because that's what the change maker work is about. We're transforming energy as part of the reality field. Okay. So that was just the first 3 lines. Funny. The new reality transitional work we as whole change makers choose to embark on is not always working in our favor. Because of that, we must be on top of our own holographic energy system and the transformative processes of our reality system, returning to a density 1 outer domain configuration. So now you kind of say, wow, that was 2 podcasts of almost 2 hours explaining 3 lines of information. But that is exactly the understanding of the complex learning processes that we are in. You think you're just seeing one version of it. You're just seeing one level of it. But there's always more behind, and each thing that we're working with matters. Each thing has its own important code that adds to that pattern of change that we're working with. So if we want to exemplify the new ways of being human, whether it is in a whole change-made project or it's a whole new reality business, we need new skill sets, as I explained in the whole Changemaker skill set courses, as well as new toolboxes. So that is that understanding that we have. That's the baseline of what we're doing here. We got psychological skill sets. We have got the progressive sciences. You have now got a bigger understanding of, a larger understanding of how to work as change makers, that you must become what you want to change. You must be the change yourself. That means all levels of what you are. It's a learning process. It's a trial and error process. It's not a goal process. It is a process of achieving different nodal points, transforming these different segments of reality. It's a process of creating patterns of change. It's a process of seeding in the ideas of what could lead to change. It's a process of seeding in all of the architectural changes that can come from a pattern of change, because you have created, you're living by your word, you're living by that pattern yourself, you're exemplifying it as the first of many for the highest good of the many. You're not expecting any outcome because you never know what the outcome is. You are not controlling other people because you are not in that business of controlling. You are not an enslaver. You're not a Draco. We are here to propose versions of reality that can come into effect as the progressive race. We are transforming energies, whether others will do it or not. We are still doing our own little project that goes with being the original version of a progressive human. We are still living the ways of being a progressive human. If that's all we're achieving, at least we have lived up to the requirements of the 1-7 pillar. If we don't get it into the 2-8 pillar where we work with others, if we don't get it into the 3-9 pillar where we work with reality, if we don't get it into the 4-10 pillar where we work with political systems and governance of our system, if we don't get it into the 5-11 where we work with the architecture behind developmental programs, or the 6-12 where we are capable of shifting out of this world and back to the progressive realities, so be it. At least we have nailed the 1-7 pillar. And the same with the base program. Take one step at a time, nail that one, tick the box, do it as you know it's supposed to be done. Some of you will say, I've done it, but you got that nagging feeling, you know you could do more. Do that extra. always rise up to the occasion, always do the extra, always do it to that level of perfection, always do the iteration, look at it, do it over. You've seen me done my website over and over and over again. For now, I'm quite content with what is on it, and it will last for a period of time. Then I'll do it over again, or I'll take it down and I'll shut down the whole project, because the world is now no longer ready to have that information out there. But it is as it is now, so therefore it's now. It's not the same it's going to be there for the rest of my life. I might embark on a different project in 5 years' time, because then I've ticked all the boxes of the whole academy, done that, lifted that project to its highest degree of perfection that is possible within this reality. And the only one that can judge that is my energy system, the amplification of what I regain of consciousness potentials by doing this work. And by doing that work and being that energy system and being that consciousness configuration and exemplifying and working with it and talking about it and seeding it in and giving it as a possibility for change for others to follow, I am living up to my original energy system and original configuration and the original purpose of this project as part of the holographic metaverse attempt to assist the D13 collective in transitioning back into the progressive worlds and continue their evolutionary journey. But if they don't want to do it, well, at least I've done every single thing that had been in my power prior timeline event, post timeline event, and now again in this time, the end times. Then I will have completed all of my projects here. I would have lived up to the requirements and what were asked of me by the ancient ones. I have stood accountable for all the trials and all the judges and all the holographic teaching systems, humans, non-humans, humanoids, non-humanoids, living, dead, what have you, all of them. Proved my innocence. Proved that it was wrong exiling me, and proved that I could do what I claimed I would do because I've done it myself. Then I can go out the gate and say, done it, tick that box. That's what we're doing as change makers. Thank you.